Hello and welcome to Daily Records. We're running through some scary records. Not necessarily scary music, but I don't know. If you've been watching the last few days, you know what I'm talking about, scary. We're going to talk about this artist. Some of you know and love this artist, and I'm putting her in this special category. This is the one and only Mrs. Miller, Elva Ruby Miller. Mrs. Miller, kind of a little bit of a sensation. She had her 15 minutes of fame in the late 60s. She recorded on Capitol Records. This is one of the LPs she did. Mrs. Miller's Greatest Hits. She was sort of a latter-day Florence Foster Jenkins. By the late 60s, she was in her late 50s, early 60s by this point. And she did these sort of high-pitched, off-key popular songs. She did stuff like Moon River, Lover's Concerto. She had this sort of Ethel Merman vibrato, and someone said, this is a quote from a book, said that her voice was compared to the sound of roaches scurrying across a trash can lid. I don't know. But Mrs. Miller's Greatest Hits, Downtown, her version of the hit song Downtown, actually reached the top 100 charts in 1966. And that was kind of her one and only big hit. She was, her name is Elva Ruby Miller, born in Missouri. And so she was kind of discovered by Laugh-In announcer Gary Owens. Gary featured Mrs. Miller on his radio program in 1960. And so she was kind of known as a comedy artist. I don't think she was, unlike Florence Foster Jenkins, who was a bit of, took it quite seriously, from everything I understand. I think Mrs. Miller knew that it was kind of a comedy thing and a little bit of a joke. But while Gary Owens kind of discovered her, she kind of went on to Capitol Records, and that's where she kind of found like radio success. And like I said, the comparisons to Florence Foster Jenkins, I think it's a natural comparison, just because sort of amateur singing. So these are novelty records for sure. Life magazine interviewed her, and she actually claimed that she was purposely conducted a half beater behind time, and said that they actually purposely chose like the worst of her recordings. She did a couple of records, Will Success Spoil Mrs. Miller, and The Country Soul of Mrs. Miller. Unfortunately, I don't have those albums. She went over to Vietnam and sang for the servicemen. She showed up on a lot of TV shows around this time. Finally, in the early 70s, pretty much interested in it. The novelty had worn off, so she kind of went back to doing charity work. From everything I understand, she was a nice lady, and she passed away about 20 years ago in a retirement home. So she lived a nice, long, full life. Now there was another act called Mrs. Miller and the Blue Notes. Not the same people, but I think it was just kind of a cash in on that. And I'm such a fan of Mrs. Miller. I not only have the stereo album, but I also have the mono. Still in the bag, sorry for the glare. Because what's better than one Mrs. Miller? Two Mrs. Millers. So fun stuff. It's crazy fun. But thought I'd talk about it on Daily Records. Mrs. Miller's Greatest Hits, today's Daily Record. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. It's Tommy Burton75. I love hearing from you guys. We'll see you tomorrow with another scary Daily Record.